Yes.
All right, good. Woo! It's about how everyone has all these different pieces to make up who we are. Like, we all have these roles that we end up fulfilling, you know, whether it's our profession or our family. But those roles don't necessarily define who we are. And then we have moments that, you know, kind of teach us something, but they don't define us, but they help shape us into who we want to become or who we're going to become. And in life, not everything that makes us up who we are is perfect and untouched, which is why I put all the fractured glass over each and every different piece. That wasn't necessary. None of the images are based on real people. They're all characters that I've created over the course of time from my various stories. And then I went through and selected a few select ones because I have a lot of stories. So I would draw them and then scan them in, and then I would put them into a program called Autodesk Sketchbook. And so I would take and I would ink, I'd add a layer, because layers are your friends. Layers are your friends. And so I would make an inking layer, and then I'd ink them, and then if I saw any imperfections as I was going, I would just fix it as I went, and then I'd make more layers for each of the colors, and it would be hair, skin, eyes, clothes, the backgrounds, anything that would have to have its own layer so it wouldn't mesh together and cause issues later. And then the fractured glass, they're actually stock images I found, and so that would be the final layer that would go on top, and then I would lower the opacity so that way it gives this kind of smoky, nostalgic feeling, which was actually kind of what I was going for. If anyone would have told me 6 months ago that I would have put together a show and it wasn't going to be a comic, I wouldn't have believed you. Not in a million years. There's no possible way. However, the comic I was working on, it wasn't working. And so I knew I needed to find something, but I wasn't really willing to go look for it. But I had to find something I was passionate about. So one day, as I was kind of working through something, I realized that, yes, things can be terrible, dysfunctional, and downright aggravating. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that life, it isn't a perfect image of what we see in the mirror. Instead, it's probably a bit cracked, maybe even a bit shattered like some of these pieces. However, that doesn't make the person looking in the mirror any less real. So, thank you so much for coming, and thank you to everyone for supporting me, and I'm ready for your questions.
Awesome. Okay, first of all, I love the thought and just like how much context you gave each of your pieces. And I was just wondering, how long did it take for you to make each of your pieces? Like, what was the time frame? Especially since you were like, okay, I'm going to do a comic. No, I'm going to do this comic. No, I'm going to do this comic. No, I'm not going to do any comics. Like, respect.
Chloe took the longest because that was the first one. And so I feel like I spent almost probably 2 to 3 like straight days working on hers. Mm-hmm. Whereas Jade, I feel like probably maybe 8 hours tops, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So. And as graphics major, respect. Layers, respect, man, respect.
Do you have any one of these that's a personal favorite or one that you just absolutely hated working on and almost scrapped?
Some of them were a real struggle, but then as I got closer and closer to the deadline, I didn't have a chance to do anything. I had to go on the wall. For some odd reason, I'm really partial to this one, Sticks, but I think it's just because he's such a sarcastic jerk that's easy to write him.
Do you identify with any of your characters more so than the others, or do you think like your personality comes through in each of them in some way?
I think sometimes like little bits of me ends up in them, and I don't know why.
Sure.
Or it's the whole, oh no, I'm relating to you. I should not be relating to you. I feel sympathy for you. Why? You're being terrible. But that's what makes them more lifelike and more likely for people to want to read about them later. Yes.
What are you working on right now that is shaping your next show?
I'm actually envisioning quite a few ideas because I'm excited about a bunch of stuff. And then for those of you who don't know, I'm going to Disney World to be in the college program after graduation. And I actually found out there's a girl there who wants to work on animation and wants to like get together a group of people and like do an animation project. So I'm probably going to chip in with that because I want to see if I could actually do storyboarding because that sounds like something I could be interested in and do a fantastic storyboarding is plotting out storyboarding. Kelsey?
So have you written a story for each of these, like actually written out one?
Not a complete one.
Okay.
Lots of them have little snippets and scenes from courses of their life, like Gray and Jade are actually brothers. And so their parents named them after tea, and their family owns a tea shop. Parenting skills. And so, like, I have lots of snippets from their life because, you know, I know some stuff from when Jade was 5 because Gray was older. And then I know some stuff, you know, from whenever Gray was a teenager that we don't talk about. Was that a question or just no?
Most of you guys probably know who I am, but for you guys who don't, my name is Ro. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming. There's a few quick things I like to do before I actually start my speech. The first one being a quick raffle. I did a thing where one of my original pieces of art I framed, and for those who bought a comic, I wanted to reward you. So if I could have Nate and Matt come up with the raffle and this is one of my original sketches for the comic, so one of the main characters. Clint. You can pick it up now or you can get it after, it doesn't matter. Next, I want to give some quick thank yous and acknowledgements. At first, I know it's kind of cliche, but I want to thank God. If it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be here right now. I'd like to thank my family for getting me here to college. That was a big thing and helping me through college. I thank my professors for showing me the techniques in art, but also what it means to be an artist. My peers, a lot of you guys have become my friends, and a lot of you guys probably don't know that there's a lot of talent down in this department, and for me, it's been very encouraging and has helped my growth. I'd like to thank those specifically who helped pose for this comic, specifically Joe, Sam, Marissa, Troy, and Dex. They helped with some of the ones that had a lot of people in it, and those are pretty tough just because of the epic pose. Once again, I'd like to thank my friends like Nate and Matt, and Noble, and Clint, and Brandon. A lot of you guys have been really kind of like an introvert and kind of like to joke around, but you guys have been very supportive and have helped me kind of deal with a lot of my stress. I'd like to thank Lawrence Hall and DCFS. I don't know if they're here, but they've given me a lot of money so that I can come to college through grants and scholarships. Finally, I'd like to give a shout out to my brother John. Nice behind my dad back there. Today's his birthday, and I know it's been kind of a little bit tough for him because it landed, or my day landed on his birthday. I want you to know that I haven't forgotten, so happy birthday. It's also Clint's mother's birthday. So. Okay, so now I'll start my speech. I want to talk about my inspirations, what has inspired me to be where I am now, and with this certain piece. I am inspired by many people, including Akira Toriyama, J.K. Rowling, C.S. Lewis, J.R. Tolkien, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Will Smith. I'm influenced by many movies: The Wizard, Remember the Titans, Back to the Future, IT Man. But these are only a few of the things I'm inspired by. I'm inspired by books, movies, other people. So I asked myself, what do all these things have in common? And what they have in common is they're all stories. They're either people telling stories or they're stories themselves. I believe that a good story can turn a bad day into a good day. A good story can turn a frown into a smile. A good story can make a rainy day feel like a pleasant day. And it can make a lonely man feel less lonely. A story just has that sort of power. And as I was writing this, I thought, how can I relate this to you guys? Well, I know a lot of you guys go to the movies, a lot of you guys read books, you guys do the same thing that I do, and the question that I would like to raise to you guys is, why do you do that? You don't just do it to do it. You like the entertainment, you like the way it makes you feel. It's kind of like putting that missing piece of a puzzle into the puzzle. So now you're complete. I believe that those who use these stories the right way are doing God's will. They bring light into this world, and that is what I wish to do. So next, I'd like to talk about my materials and my process in making this, but also my other art. Over the last 3 years, my technique has changed a lot. The materials that I use have changed, and just my attitude. When I first came here, my freshman year, I wasn't that good, and I wanted to be very good, and I knew that I wanted to do comics, and I believe the same thing that I believe now. If you want to be good at something, find people that have already done it. If you can follow people that have found success, then you'll find success. So with that mindset, I wanted to do it just like them. I wanted to use the quill, the G pen, and the brush and ink. I wanted to do it the exact same way, so that when my professor said, you gotta find yourself, that was kind of tough for me. And I found that I was getting better, but I wasn't really happy, and my progress was kind of slow. And so I gave my professors what they said. I gave it a try, and I started using stuff like watercolor, micro Prismacolor markers, gouache, and simple mechanical pencils, and I just started to get better. And the one thing that I've kind of grown to understand is it wasn't me, like my skill that changed. Well, my skill did change, but it was my mindset. I went from a closed mindset to an open mindset, which opened so many doors for me. For the art of The Last Samurai, my actual comic, my process and the materials that I used were a simple mechanical pencil. I needed an eraser, and an eraser pencil, which basically is a pencil, but instead of lead, it has an eraser. Photoshop is pretty big in this. Once I finished sketching all the pages out, I used Photoshop to edit and add the fonts and add some of the screen tones in the back. And then I sent it to the publisher, which was blurred, and that's how I got these published. My process. My process always starts with the idea. Sometimes I'll have a dream, or I'll just have an aha moment where light bulb goes off. And the first thing that I do is I write it down as fast as I can, or I'll record myself saying it. That way it won't disappear. And once I've done that, I'll just start sketching as much as I can about the world, about the characters, putting footnotes, just doing as much as I can to make this small idea into something bigger, to kind of help myself understand what's going on. And honestly, that is probably my most fun part about the process. After that, the next thing is I create a storyboard. The storyboard, like Gretchen was saying, is basically my way of figuring out how I'm going to tell you guys what I'm trying to explain. And that can be through a book, just writing it, but for me and someone that's using a comic, it's frame to frame, picture to picture. So I'll do a lot of little thumbnails of, oh, I got up this morning, so I picture myself getting out of bed, I took a shower, maybe she'll shower head. I went to chapel, and so that's what I'll do. And that's not too bad, because those don't have to be in depth. And after that, I get to the hard work of actually doing the work, sketching the actual pictures, getting people to come in to model. And that for me is the toughest, because I'm kind of like free spirit. I don't like to be held down. So I kind of have to like sit down in that chair and get to work. Once that is done, I'll use a program like Photoshop to edit it. And in this case, I printed them out, had them framed, cleaned the frames, and sent it to the publisher. So that is my material and my process. Lastly, I'd like to talk about my message and what I hope that you guys can take from this. This was probably the toughest part about creating my art statement. I wanted to be able to tell you guys what I was trying to present, and in a way that I was kind of like opening myself up. So it was kind of tough. So bear with me. The tell of the art of The Last Samurai is significant to me because of the way it has on my personal growth and the message it is meant to give to you guys, the reader. Like I said before, when I first came here, my freshman year, I I wasn't that good at all. I had a lot of potential, I think, and I was a hard worker, but the pieces that I finished just didn't click with what I wanted to do. And the first ever comic book that I sketched out my first year was this one. My freshman year was this one. And it wasn't that good. And I remember printing it out and I just, I felt kind of shaky about it. And I remember when my professor said, at least I got it done, you know, the fact that I got it done shows some growth, and then I'll look back upon it. And so I spent the next 3 years, you know, watching my peers, trying to figure out what they were doing right, how I could be better, listening to my professors, and just trying to be humble. And when my senior year came around, and I thought, well, what am I going to do for my senior art show? I said, well, I know I'm going to do a comic book, but how about I go back and fix or redo what I did my freshman year? And I can say, looking back at it, it is a lot better than it was. And I know I have a long way to go, but it is very encouraging to see how far I've come. The second part of my message, which I think is probably the most important, is I want to show God's grace and the hope of God through every piece of art or everything that I do. The world that my characters live in and this world that we live in are mirror worlds. They're both chaotic. There's both death and destruction and darkness and diseases and homelessness, just so much like chaos, and kind of just picture darkness everywhere. In this story, there's a third war where basically everyone's just kind of like giving up on life, and there's so much chaos, and everyone's like, is it worth going on? Is it worth living? And then all of a sudden, this general comes and he said, don't worry, I have a government, I'm gonna put some stuff in place, and everyone's like, great, finally there's gonna be order and not as much chaos, and they're like giving a piece of hope to them. And then they find out that this guy isn't really about what he says he's about. He's more about power. He wants people to obey him. And that hope that they had is taken away from them, and all of a sudden they're like, man, is this really worth living again? And then once they're feeling kind of down again, these group of champions come to protect the people. They're like, well, you can't do that. You can't make these people work 17 hours a day with them, be mean to them. You gotta treat them like people, because they are people. And then everyone was like, yeah, we can be hopeful. But as you guys probably don't know, is as the story goes on, these samurais that came to protect the people start to disappear. They just aren't there anymore, and the leader starts to abuse his power. I think this is significant because the main characters in the story, which are like younger individuals, they realize that this is a broken world, but they understand that if they live moment by moment, that they can make it bearable, that they can shine their light on the world. And although that hope that's been given to them is being taken away, if everyone pitches in, you know, things will get better. It'll be more bearable until Christ returns. And so to kind of like put that into modern day terms, I don't know when Christ is going to come back. I don't know if he's going to come back as soon as we leave this building, or 200, 300, 1,000 years from later from today. But I do believe that when he comes back, he will be a beacon of light, that all this darkness that is around us will be kind of like blown away, and there will be so much hope that everyone will be walking around smiling all the time. But I believe until that day comes, that we all gotta just come together and know that I believe personally that God has given us all a purpose, whether that's living moment by moment, saying something nice, lifting each other up, or going out to fulfill becoming a doctor or an artist. I believe that whenever we reach that purpose, that light that God has put in us shines brighter, and we can be warm in this darkness. So, yeah, thank you guys for coming, and I guess I'll open the floor for questions.
Are you just gonna leave us with a cliffhanger in your comic book, or are you thinking about like maybe doing it as a side project when you graduate and continuing the series?
Oh yeah, I have the whole thing planned out. It's gonna be about 100 chapters.
Yes.
So, yeah, you can bear another 10 years. You'll probably see it in
Cool. If Jesus doesn't come back before then.
Bethany?
What are some of your favorite projects that you've worked on, like besides
I guess a lot of the projects when I first started, I wasn't very open-minded, but once my mind was open, I started having more fun. An example of this is like printmaking. When I first took that class, I didn't like it. I showed up 30 minutes late every day. It wasn't for me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I thought, I want to be doing comics. Why am I here carving out of the block? And the next year, I came back with this open mindset, and the class was just wonderful. I don't know what happened, but something that I hated became an enjoyment. You know, just etching. I don't know if you know, printmaking is kind of like a stamp. You can take a block and you carve an image in it, and then you roll it with ink, and you put it on a piece of paper and you print it. So that's one of the things I've come to enjoy. And to be honest, I haven't done a lot of it, but if I have free time, I'll probably go back and do more of that art. And another one is oil color, oil painting. I also haven't done a lot of that, but I think once I kind of caught the spirit of watching other people doing it and seeing that I could do it, it's become more interesting. So I definitely will continue doing those along with advancing in my art for comic books. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask how you did your line work.
What do you mean by
When
line
you
work?
were inking your sketches.
Oh, okay. So for this one, I chose not to use the micron pen. In the past, I've always tried to ink all my lines, but when I started, I had this debate on if I could go without doing the inking, not because it's the easy way out, but because I like the grittedness of it. It kind of has like a feel to it that it doesn't when you ink it. And my thing was when you print it out with the press, it's ink that's being printed out onto it, but it still keeps that graphite feeling to it. So to answer your question, I didn't ink it. I just used the mechanical pencil.
Is there a reason that it's black and white?
Yes. This right here is based off of the Japanese version of a comic book, which is called manga. Usually most of it is black and white. I think it's because it's cheaper to print mass volumes of it. So you'll buy a book and it'll come with 200 pages of this black and white, and maybe have like 3 pages that are in color. And that way you can buy that for $7.99. You'll have like 8 chapters in it, whereas an American comic book will come with maybe 20 pages or something with color, but you gotta wait every month to get it. So it's just kind of like a quantity over quality, or quantity and quality together. So. Well, that's everything. I'd like, once again, like to thank you guys for coming. Thank you.